There's a quiet transformation that happens to a Gen X man somewhere around his 50s, a shift that most people outside of that experience completely misunderstand. If you're in your late 40s or well into your 50s, you've probably felt it. It's a sudden, unmistakable drop in your tolerance for nonsense. You care less about what people think. You stop explaining yourself, and somehow you become remarkably difficult to manipulate. To the outside world, corporate managers, social manipulators, and even younger generations, this change looks alarming. They don't call it wisdom, they call it difficult, they call it cold. But why does society panic when a man stops playing a game he spent 30 years trying to win? What is the psychological switch that flips in a Gen X man's mind after 50 that makes him entirely immune to the traditional levers of control? The answer isn't bitterness, it's something far more profound and far more dangerous to anyone who relies on your compliance. Let's look at the game we were all taught to play. When you were in your 20s and 30s, power looked like a specific set of metrics. It was the title on the door, the size of the paycheck, the brand of the car, and the ability to win an argument in a crowded room. You played the corporate ladder game, the social status game, and the approval game. You wanted people to notice you were smart, capable, and hard-working. And for a long time, that worked. It kept you motivated. But somewhere along the way, the math stopped making sense. You realized that every time you chased someone else's approval, you were handing them a remote control to your emotions. If they clapped, you felt good. If they frowned, you scrambled to fix it. That is the exact mechanism of control that keeps younger men trapped. Approval is a leash. When you hit your 50s, that leash snaps. Not because you woke up one day and decided to be rebellious, but because you did the brutal math of life. You've had your heart broken. You've built things that crumbled, lost money, lost jobs, and buried people who mattered to you. You've stood in front of mirrors after a failure that felt world-ending at the time, and you woke up the next day and survived. When you realize you can survive failure, the fear of disapproval evaporates. But if approval is no longer currency, what replaces it? How does a man operate in a world that still expects him to dance to its tune when he has completely forgotten the steps? Enter the Gen X superpower, the art of unbothered silence. Think about the last time someone tried to bait you into an argument. Maybe it was an office politics dispute, an online debate, or family drama designed to get a reaction. 10 years ago, you might have jumped in. You would have brought your facts, your logic, and your desire to prove you were right. Not anymore. Now, you look at the situation, you see the emotional trap being laid, and you simply don't step in. You offer a calm, neutral nod. You let the other person twist in the wind of their own theatrical urgency. Younger generations and chronically online culture cannot handle silence. To them, silence is a vacuum that must be filled immediately with noise, justification, or escalation. When a conversation gets uncomfortable, they panic and double down. But a 50-year-old Gen X man has learned that tension is often just noise masquerading as emergency. You can sit in a room of screaming people and feel completely anchored. And that drives control freaks insane. When someone realizes they cannot make you react the way they used to, they lose their power over you. They try to label your emotional discipline as detachment or apathy, but psychology calls it something else, self-regulation. You aren't apathetic, you're selective. You've realized that energy is finite, and spending it on people who are addicted to drama is like pouring water into sand. Which brings us to a darker realization, one that separates the men who merely age from the men who truly mature. What happens when a man stops trying to fix everyone else's emotional chaos? For most of our lives, men are conditioned to believe that our value is tied to our utility. Fix the car, pay the mortgage, solve the crisis, manage everyone's feelings, be the rock. And being the rock is a noble calling, but there is a trap hidden inside it. The belief that it is your job to manage the emotional weather of everyone around you. In your 50s, a profound psychological liberation occurs. You realize some people don't want to be fixed, they want to be victims. Think about the relief in that realization. For decades, you tortured yourself trying to help people who kept stepping on rakes and blaming you for the bruise. You tried to reason with the unreasonable. You tried to rescue people who were comfortable in their dysfunction. When you cross into your 50s, you develop a terrifying clarity. You spot manipulation patterns from a mile away because you've seen the exact same script played out in different costumes since 1995. You look at someone manufacturing a crisis, and instead of rushing in with a cape, you say, "That sounds difficult. I hope you figure it out." And you walk away. You can still love people without enabling them. You can care about someone without letting them set your life on fire. That boundary isn't built out of malice, it's built out of scars. You've learned the hard way that when you sacrifice your own peace to keep everyone else comfortable, everybody loses, starting with you. But if you let go of approval, if you master silence, and if you stop trying to save everyone, what is left? What does a truly uncontrollable man look like in his daily life? He looks ordinary. That's the irony. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. He doesn't need to flash wealth to feel worthy. He doesn't need to win arguments to prove his intellect. Gen X grew up during a unique bridge in human history. The last generation to remember what life was like before smartphones, algorithmic outrage, and instant validation. You remember how to be bored. You remember how to build things with your hands, fix things when they broke, and handle consequences face to face. That analog foundation creates a psychological resilience that modern hyper-connected culture struggles to comprehend. When a man over 50 has figured out that he can live on less, that status symbols are just expensive leashes, and that his worth is intrinsic rather than productive, he becomes indestructible. You can't threaten him with financial ruin because he knows how to downsize and start over. You can't hurt him with insults because his opinion of himself outweighs yours. You can't trap him with guilt because he has already forgiven his past failures. That is why corporate systems, political extremes, and manipulative environments find the 50-year-old Gen X man so unnerving. He is the ultimate anomaly, a man who wants nothing from them, fears nothing from them, and refuses to participate in their anxiety. This is your time. Not a time of decline, as youth-obsessed culture tries to whisper in your ear, but a time of actual, unadulterated power. The power to say no without an explanation. The power to sit in silence while the world scrambles for attention. The power to build the life you actually want, unburdened by the tyranny of other people's expectations. You aren't dangerous because you're angry. You're dangerous because you're free. And in a world addicted to control, a free man is the most radical thing you can possibly be.